Greetings, Culture Warriors. This is Jeff Vieira, author of Culture is Everything, and your host for this Dispatch from the Front. Today, I want to talk a little bit about a story here. Amazon.com continues to be in the news, not necessarily for the best of reasons. It is my opinion that Amazon's culture is imploding at the moment based on all that we're seeing come out in the press, but we'll see how that continues to develop. This story is from CNBC. Amazon is suing a cloud employee who left for Google, rekindling the debate over non-compete agreements. Amazon is challenging former executive Brian Hall in Washington State Court after he took a job at cloud rival Google. People are speaking out against state rules that enable companies to block employees from switching their alliances to competitors after Amazon sued an employee who left its cloud unit for a new role at Google's cloud business. The uproar brings back to the fore the topic of whether laws should allow companies to mount legal attacks against employees who decamp to rivals, while also showing how fiercely large companies are challenging one another in the cloud. Amazon and Microsoft, two of the world's most valuable companies, have both filed lawsuits against employees to block them from immediately joining competitors. Last year, the legislature in Washington, where Amazon and Microsoft are based, imposed restrictions on non-competition clauses, including one that limits these agreements to workers who earn more than $100,000 per year. The flap started when former Amazon Web Services product marketing manager Brian Hall accepted the same position at Google after being passed over for promotion, Amazon said in a lawsuit, which was filed last month in Washington State Court. After Pacific Northwest technology news website GeekWire reported on the lawsuit, Hall updated his LinkedIn and Twitter profiles to describe himself as a VP in purgatory at Google. On Monday, Hall tweeted a link to an article about the lawsuit saying simply, some personal news? The tweet garnered over 14,000 likes. On Tuesday, Amazon sought a temporary restraining order that could prevent Hall from working on cloud marketing at Google, including editing speeches for the online-only cloud conference Google will start next month, one of the tasks Google identified for Hall to work on before a preliminary injunction meeting scheduled for July 31st. Hall, who was at Microsoft more than 20 years before joining Amazon, signed a confidentiality, non-competition, and invention assignment agreement with Amazon before he joined the company in July 2018. The agreement barred him from working for a competitor for 18 months. Amazon noted that Hall helped to assemble AWS's, that's Amazon Web Services, product roadmap in 2020 and 21, where he had access to information like sales goals. Amazon argued that Hall couldn't market Google products without drawing on this proprietary information, giving Google an unfair advantage. Hall's lawyers countered by saying his position at Google wouldn't require him to draw on sensitive information he was privy to at Amazon. Former AWS marketing president Ariel Kelman had led Hall to think Amazon wouldn't enforce the non-compete agreement and said he hadn't seen AWS use it against someone in marketing. Hall's lawyers argued. That's a grammatical eccentricity in the original piece. Kelman himself, in January, left Amazon to take a job as Oracle's new marketing chief, and Amazon did not go after Kelman. However, Amazon has repeatedly gone to court over the agreements. In 2014, Amazon sued Zoltan Zabadi, an AWS employee who worked on partnerships who went to Google. Zabadi still works in Google, according to his LinkedIn profile. In 2017, Amazon went after former AWS president Gene Farrell when he sought to join software company Smartsheet. Amazon later dropped the case. And earlier this year, Amazon dropped a suit it had brought against Philip Moyer, managing director of financial services at AWS, who became a vice president at Google Cloud. Amazon controls the biggest share of the cloud infrastructure market at about 48% in 2018, according to an estimate from technology industry research company Gartner. That prominence has helped AWS turn into Amazon's main generator of operating profit. Amazon declined to comment. Google, with an estimated 4% of the cloud infrastructure market in 2018, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Several technology industry workers have begun sounding off anew about laws permitting non-compete rules. In general, California courts have refused to enforce non-compete agreements for employees who live in the state, even if they sign the agreements in another state. In 2010, HP tried to stop its former CEO, Mark Hurd, from joining arch-rival Oracle, but dropped the suit after a few days, instead forcing Hurd to sign an agreement not to disclose proprietary information and give back some restricted stock grants. But companies can exercise various types of non-compete agreements in Washington, Massachusetts, New York, and other states, according to a guide maintained by Boston law firm Beck Reed Ryden. In 2018, New York-based IBM filed suit against its former chief diversity officer, Lindsay Ray McIntyre, for taking the same position at Microsoft in a case that was quickly settled. Some tech workers are speaking out against them now. Washington State should abolish non-competes, Christina Warren, a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft, wrote in a Monday tweet in response to Hall's personal news tweet. Hal Berenson, who worked for both Microsoft and Amazon, tweeted on Tuesday that it's definitely time to sunset non-compete clauses. Brad Fitzpatrick, a former Google staff software engineer, said on Twitter on Monday that he had interviewed at AWS recently, but things came to a half after he made it clear he wouldn't sign an agreement with non-compete language. All right, so what is going on here? A lot of hypocrisy, as you might expect. Just on a point of personal order, I am somewhat familiar with Amazon's approach to this. I actually was pulled out when Amazon was looking to do some business-to-business work in the industry that I belonged to at the time. I was pulled out there for an interview. It was kind of a sham interview in that there was no position per se that I was interviewing for. They were looking to get in this business, and it was kind of exploratory. And with one of the interviewers, they spent the entire time discussing pricing models in that industry. So it was more picking my brain on how pricing worked, because that was a major difference in that industry versus other things Amazon was looking at. So it was a little bit of a sham in that regard. They didn't worry too much about proprietary information on that. That was my concern, and I had to, protect the company's proprietary information that I was working for. But they continued to probe and probe and probe. So it wasn't their concern. They were more than happy to exploit proprietary information on kind of a sham basis when it suited them, when it gave them a competitive advantage. And here they are getting the vapors over the notion that somebody that they passed over for promotion, which is a big deal in these roles. Basically, if you're passed over for promotion, they're telling you there is no growth path for you here any longer. And so this employee decided, well, that's fine, took a lateral position with Google, the main advantage of which was no doubt being promotable again. So this person was thinking long-term in their career. They decided to cross to another tech company. And this happens all the time. Amazon, Google, Oracle, these are all top names. Apple, all top names in the tech field. So if one doesn't offer you a growth path that you want, you can easily jump to another and go from there. Now, do I believe that Google, who's playing catch up in the cloud space, has no interest in this gentleman's proprietary information? No, of course not. I'm sure that was the first questions that they had for him. Google is not really known for following rules. And so I doubt seriously that they would hire somebody over from Amazon, from their cloud offering, and not want to know about that cloud offering. Clearly they do. So I think that notion that he wouldn't have to use that proprietary information in his role there, probably not true. I'm sure behind closed doors, they interrogated him on that. Now, that said, we also have to look at the damage done when someone's competitive secrets are shared with a competitor. That's generally not a good thing. But the truth is that a lot of personnel move back and forth between tech companies all the time. And I'm not sure how well those agreements are being honored. The second aspect of this is that the companies are tending to view employees after they've left the company as a company asset. You know, non-competes generally only count when you have somebody that's high up who has been given something for the non-compete period. So they continue to get paid out under their contract during that period. Courts generally don't like to see agreements that are all one way. They don't tend to honor them. And if this person was given nothing by Amazon for that non-compete agreement, it's likely non-enforceable. On the other hand, if Amazon said, look, you know, for a period of 18 months after you leave us, we're going to continue to pay you out. So maybe you get a big severance, but you've got 18 months on the sidelines until you come back. You see this in the entertainment industry all the time, right? Conan O'Brien famously had to spend quite a while on the sidelines because of his non-compete, but he was paid that whole time. He was still technically under contract. He didn't have to do anything. He just got paid. So that's generally the price of these non-competes. But what does it tell you about the companies involved? So Amazon is in an interesting position because here it is. They've taken somebody that they don't want to promote. They've told them, we're not going to promote you. We're going to promote somebody else. And then they're saying, but your knowledge is so important to us. We're going to go to court. We're going to raise a big stink in the halls of justice here to enforce this non-compete agreement that we made you sign. So I think the value judgment you have to get on that is whatever is on that product roadmap, Amazon values much more than the people who create it. I think that's the only interpretation you can really draw from that. They're also obviously very concerned about competition from Google Cloud. If he had gone somewhere else, would they have enforced it? Probably not. You see some examples in the article given of people who've gone to other companies where Amazon did not pursue them for this non-proprietary thing. So I think it tells you something else too, which is that if it's his knowledge of the 2020-2021 roadmap that's at issue here, then it tells you that Amazon's development cycle has to be longer than 2 years. Because otherwise they could just change it, right? If they were bringing these products to market and they had a gestation time of under a year, well, by the time this guy settles in and shares what he knows, and by the time Google Cloud reacts to it, it's going to take a while. Otherwise, the damage from this information wouldn't be that big. They seem to be set in concrete for a while on whatever's on that roadmap path. It's got long development cycles, apparently. More than that, Google seems to have the wherewithal to move quickly to close the gap. Because that's the power of that information. If you know what Amazon's doing, then you can take that information, and if you're nimble, you can more quickly close the current gap using that information. But that's only true if you're pretty nimble. So I think that says something about it. Google does not want to be perceived as rating people to innovate. That much is clear by their saying, hey, they weren't interested in this. But clearly that's what they're doing. That's why they hired this guy in that space, right? Is because he had experience doing just what they're seeking for him to do. So it's an interesting point in intellectual property, in understanding how people view their employees. And I think what it's typical of is a company on Amazon's part that views its employees as merely assets on the balance sheet. Otherwise, why go after this one person? You have patents for a reason. If someone, if Google takes some action based on information, that's intellectual property belonging to Amazon, well, they can pursue the normal course of action to go after them for that, and then, see how that kind of plays. But I don't think there was a need to punish an employee who's just moving on with his career, making a very rational decision. Look, if you don't see me as having a future in this company, then I'm going to take my talents elsewhere. Perfectly reasonable thing to do. They're in effect denying him employment opportunities for no stated reason. So anyway, interesting times and an interesting take on the continuing cultural tumult at Amazon. I would suggest to anyone who's of an inventive bent that you be very careful going into a company like Amazon, where they essentially view you as just a cog in a machine. That's probably not, you can probably find better situations more conducive to true innovation elsewhere. I would also suggest that anyone following the company keep a real close eye on Walmart. Walmart continues to make great inroads. Walmart.com has become a go-to platform for a lot of people in this pandemic who hadn't had the opportunity to really try it out before, and now have. My wife goes out on Walmart.com more frequently than she does Amazon these days. And so I think that's the real spot. Amazon is kind of trying to position itself as the e-com solution within the cloud. But I think you're going to see it cede ground to Walmart as a retailer in that space pretty significantly over the next year or so. There's just too much negative news coming out of Amazon right now, and Walmart is really steadily progressing. So keep an eye on Walmart as well, and we'll see how this all shakes out in the months ahead. Again, it should provide fascinating reading for anyone interested in the intersection of culture and process. And aren't we all interested in that? Because as we all know, winning the market share battle in the cloud and winning your intellectual property battles in court are one thing, but at the end of the day, culture is everything. Thank you and have a great day.